talk about the Hurricanes. I think they're going to be a very different looking team next year, and they lost a lot of players.
Yeah, they did. And if you ask me what team that I think had the worst offseason, in my mind, Chives, it is the Carolina Hurricanes to me. They've had a terrible, awful offseason. They've lost a lot of talent. And first of all, they weren't in a place where they could afford to lose this much talent because you look at the last couple of years. I think Carolina is shaping up to be, and I'm smiling saying this, they're shaping up to be a team that just they can't win. They can't win the big game when it matters most. And I think they were in a position where they needed to add talent, or not even add talent. They needed to retain talent, and they couldn't even retain talent. You look at it; they failed to re-sign Jake Gensel, and I said, that when I listened to Gensel's end of the year postseason presser after right after the Rangers beat the Hurricanes, I could tell immediately that he was not going to be. His head just wasn't in that mindset of re-signing with Carolina. So they failed to re-sign Gensel. They lost Teravainen. There, always a head scratcher there. But he in the playoffs again. He's had bigger performances in previous years. This year was a little bit more on the quiet side, but still, I think in the terms of regular season, because seeding is so important, Chives. Teravainen was so crucial to that team in the regular season. Now, the postseason, again, didn't show up, but you can kind of contrast that to the Rangers. So they lose Teravainen, they lose Pesci now, they lose Brady Shea. I mean, that is just a huge loss in Carolina's defense. I mean, not to mention, the long-term future of some of their other pieces is still up in the air. They still have a lot of restricted free agents that they still need to work out. So listen, I think, Pesci is a big loss for them. I really do think. Carolina to me, they are not going to be the same team that they were last year. They took a major step back. Now they're still going to be there. Don't get me wrong. They're still going to be a thorn in the side to the Rangers, but they took a major step back.
Yeah, and we're talking, Natchez, Jarvis still unsigned. Their lines are looking like Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis. He will likely sign. Roslovic. I mean, that right there is a red flag. We know that. Kuznetsov, to me, that's a little bit of a red flag. You're going to have him play 82 next year. Natchez on the right wing, if, barring he signs. And I thought Natchez was actually going to be a New Jersey Devil at this point. So Jordan Martinook, and they lose Stefan Nason to the New Jersey Devils. So he goes back to New Jersey. And now, they had like Martinook and Nason were like they play a similar game. Now they just have one of those guys, a Martinook, that they re-signed, Stahl and Fost, and their fourth line, Carrier, who they added, playoff guy, legit. Jack Drury, Jesperi Kakiniemi, who just struggled. Like, he was on the trade block for sure. Their defense now, Slavin, 38-year-old Brent Burns, Sean Walker, who they really paid a lot of money for, 5-year contract, Dmitry Orlov, Shane Gostisbehere, reclamation type deal, and Jalen Chatfield will be full-time next year. Different team. And I think one that definitely warrants some question.
Yeah, for sure. I like that point you made in there with Sean Walker. I forgot about him for a second. That definitely seems to be a big downgrade from Brett Pesci. I think any cocky mind will tell you that. Again, Walker is solid. A couple of the other guys they brought in, they cause havoc on the power play, but I don't think it's a big enough of a hole. Replacing Brady Shea and Brett Pesci, I just don't think you could replace that, in my opinion. Jacob Slavin, like you mentioned, he's you can make the argument he was their best defenseman. I think signing a long-term contract at a bargain rate, I thought they got him off. They got him for a decently fair price. I still think that was a good move for them. They needed to retain some assets. But again, to me, scoring depth is still a big issue for the Hurricanes. Not to mention, you mentioned Jarvis and Natchez. I mean, they were two of their biggest names in the playoffs. I mean, their future is still unknown. I think, to me, Jarvis seems like a given, but Natchez, I'm not sure. So, what do you think about that?
100% dead on. And I don't even think it's curiosity just about Natchez's situation in Carolina. He struggled to score, and we saw he can get to the net. he struggled to finish in the playoffs. Jarvis, you're right. I think he's a given. Like he is money in the bank. He was a great draft selection. He's been a phenomenal player at his age. Same draft class as Lafreniere. Yeah. The other thing too with Carolina, they traded a lot for the next player we'll be talking about, and that's Jake Gensel. They traded assets for him, prospects, the whole nine. Don't retain him, so that also came at a net loss for them as well, right?
Oh, of course. And that's why, to me, they're the biggest loser. I think they're one of the biggest losers of the offseason. I mean, you could sit here and ramble. I'm sure we'll get to a few other teams that did it practically nothing. But to me, they're still in a better opportunity. And when you give up, assets for a player, especially big assets, I think, especially when it's a player like Gensel, that should be your number one priority. That's something you have to retain, because if things don't work out, and let's be honest, either in hockey, unless you're an elite of an elite, you have more of a 50% chance of things not working out. So the assets that they lost now and not retaining Gensel, I mean, is huge. I mean, I don't want to say the franchise is devastating, but it is a devastating loss for a franchise that moved on from their GM. I don't want to say they are moving into a different direction, but you bring in somebody else, the whole approach, the layout processes, everything changes to an extent. So, I mean, Carolina is going to be different. I think you worded it fairly. And to me, Steve-O's biggest loser of the offseason, Carolina Hurricanes.
Steve-O's biggest loser, Carolina Hurricanes. They couldn't retain Jake Gensel. That looked like the first domino that was going to fall after trading a lot at the trade deadline. He goes to the Tampa Bay Lightning.